for inviting me. And can you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear?
sir.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you for,
Yes.
for inviting me and giving me this opportunity of listening to people who are very knowledgeable about it. The Bangladesh-India relationship, somehow or other, has been with me since 1972. I was then in trade ministry here and were involved in Bangladesh, India-Bangladesh trade agreement. Then I had the opportunity of accompanying Bangabandhu in 1974 to Delhi for signing that uh, summit agreement. And it was also a great pleasure that I could accompany his daughter, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, in 2010 till now on her visits to India and working on the relationship. We have progressed quite a bit, and we have also explored new opportunities, but I guess we are not yet at the optimal point. There are more to do. Uh, and Ambassador, I agree with Ambassador Bhatia, if I understood him clearly, that new opportunities are opening up, and we have to work together to realize the opportunities. I would I would say that in 2010, sorry, the Border and Enclave Exchange Agreement was signed in 1974. But because of some court procedures in India, action could not be taken until after 2010. Uh, that was a turning point, definitely, in our relationship. Water resource management and sharing water is a critical issue. I do recognize that India has a very complex water management regime. Uh, the internal uh, regulation recognize the rights of the lower riparian. I often wonder if India accepts the right of lower riparian, uh, can that be taken as a general principle, which applies also to sharing of water, management of water resources jointly? Actually, the joint communique of 2010 does admit that the two countries would cooperate in water resource basin-wide management of rivers. But because of the complexity of the Indian regime, uh, uh, I mean, it takes some time to deliver, even if there is the best intention to do something. Uh, Bangladesh has become a critical transit route for India, particularly for the mainland India to northeastern states. And we have also agreed that India can use our ports and the transit facilities for export to third countries. We basically followed the GATT and the WTO principles. And Mustafizur Rahman uh, knows much better about those principles, and he may possibly come back on that. Transit charges that crops up as an issue from time to time. One opinion is to look at the marginal cost of providing transit facilities that apparently is in conformity with the GATT procedures, GATT rules, which have been accepted by uh, WTO. The other alternative is to share the savings that each side makes by using the shorter routes to another country. Uh, that that kind of involves a kind of exchanges back and forth as to what is the savings, whether there is any wastage, and so on. Marginal cost would be a clearer principle to follow, uh, and that would be beneficial to both. When you bargain across the table, the eyes are on the apportionment of the benefits that originates from certain joint activities, certain cooperation. Trade remains a tricky issue, uh, and I guess the trade shocks that we get from time to time because of ban in India or because of ban in Bangladesh, but suddenly you find that you have lost access to the consumer goods that you had been depending on for import from India. I wonder if it is possible for the two countries to evolve a mechanism by which it can coordinate and have a kind of early warning of the difficulties which are coming. Uh, Now, I would refer to the joint communique and the framework agreement for cooperation in 2011, which had been given additional depth and dimension since Prime Minister Narendra Modi took office. Uh, uh, Now, the framework agreement and the joint communique on all the agreements afterwards, it seems to me that they look at a much broader and deeper scope of cooperation. At the same time, the cooperation cannot be realized unless the sector specific and agency specific agreements are made. It's quite difficult to join the two aspects, the macro dimensions of the economic relation and the micro aspects which are necessary to deliver the benefits that we expect. That reminds me of a format that worked during Bangabandhu's administration. The planners and the top policymakers of the two countries, they work together to identify where does competitive advantage lie, and to agree that where you have the competitive advantage, you invest there for production, but that output would be available for consumption or investment in the other country also. That benefit both, but that also implies very strongly that the planners and also the top decision makers of the two countries get together from time to time to look at their portfolio of investment and decide which are the portfolios which can be picked up by each other to invest in their respective countries. Of course, our intention would be to get more investment from India, and particularly in those areas where India has already attained uh, the world-class quality like education, health, maybe in some dimensions, some areas of technological innovations. Uh, in the meantime, I guess I mean, it is not a full-fledged realization of the opportunities, but maybe a step forward. If the two countries could coordinate and harmonize the procedural rules which affect the movement of goods and services and human beings across the border, I do recognize that the taxation, import, export, etc., are very sensitive subjects for international jurisdiction. So I would not go to the extent of saying that the rates, etc., should be the same or identical. But I would suggest that the procedural rules may be harmonized so that you don't get stuck at the border point. The trade flows more smoothly, human beings flow more smoothly. Uh, so I think that this procedural rules coordination would be an important step towards better trade. Uh, Mr. Pandey had talked about export of power from India to Bangladesh. That's a great opportunity, and following the uh, joint communique and the subsequent framework agreement for cooperation, there are stipulations that we also bring in progressively Nepal and Bhutan into the cooperation framework, either on the basis of projects which they feel would be beneficial to them, or by signing to the framework agreement or specific areas of cooperation to which they agree. So that would expand the geographical area of cooperation. To go back to our basic approach was, if I understood the political bosses clearly, uh, to take a very hard look at the Radcliffe Award, which divided the subcontinent, to neutralize its impact in the economic sense while respecting the national state boundaries that separate each of us. So I guess Ambassador Bhatia made a very made made a very significant point that uh, we should not confine our cooperation only to the bilateral relations, but look also at the joint approach that we may have towards the global relations. That would be very important and beneficial to both of us. And thank you all again for inviting me to this great and giving me this great opportunity.